There comes a time in every soul's journey when words must do more than fill the silence. They must move mountains within others. The power to persuade is not a trick or tool of the cunning, it is a sacred art, earned through self-mastery and spiritual alignment. If you wish to influence another, you must first understand the vast wilderness within your own heart. For how can you draw someone toward your vision if you do not see clearly through your own eyes? The unexamined mind attempts to control, the awakened mind connects. Persuasion is not domination, but revelation, a revealing of something in you that already echoes in them. Each individual you meet is not a blank page to be written upon, but a living myth, a soul shaped by ancient symbols and forgotten stories. To persuade, you must recognize the deeper patterns that animate them. Is the warrior alive in them, thirsting for purpose, or is the lover longing for connection? Perhaps the orphan seeks belonging, or the ruler craves order. When you speak to these archetypes, you do not merely persuade, you awaken. But beware, words have no power if they are not forged in the furnace of authenticity. People feel your energy before they hear your sentence. If your intention is to use, they will retreat. If your intention is to serve, they will lean in. To move another, you must first be unmoved by your own insecurities. You must stand in the center of your being, not reaching or grasping, but radiating truth. Speak not to convince, but to remind. True persuasion is the gentle unveiling of what someone already senses, but has not yet named. Your words are not weapons, they are mirrors. Let them see themselves in what you offer. Let them recognize their future through your certainty, and listen not with the ears, but with the soul. Behind every sentence someone speaks is a silent yearning. If you cannot hear it, you do not yet understand them. When you listen deeply, they will feel seen. And when someone feels seen, they are already halfway persuaded. You must become the embodiment of your message. Walk into the room with the authority of someone who needs nothing, but can offer everything. When you become the presence others wish to experience, your requests are no longer demands, they are invitations. Remember, people do not follow logic alone. They follow light. Be the light that shines on their path, not to blind, but to guide. If you would have them follow you, show them who they are when they walk with you. The path of persuasion is the path of inner mastery. When you master your fears, clarify your truth, and speak with the voice of the soul, you no longer need to manipulate. You simply reveal, and what is true, when spoken clearly, draws others like stars to gravity. The foundation of all true persuasion begins not with others, but within oneself. Before one utters a single word meant to influence another, a reckoning must occur within the persuader's own psyche. We cannot hope to lead another soul unless we have first encountered the truth of our own. The unexamined man speaks to impress, the awakened man speaks to align. And there lies the chasm between manipulation and meaningful influence. The former arises from insecurity, the latter from self-knowledge. To persuade with integrity, one must come to terms with the fragmented forces operating within one's being. The conscious mind may desire influence, yet the unconscious harbors insecurities, old wounds, power, seeking fantasies, and fears of rejection. Until these inner contradictions are brought into the light of consciousness, every attempt to persuade will be tainted, distorted by unseen needs. This is why self-awareness is not a luxury in persuasion, but a necessity. A man who is blind to his own motives may still persuade, but he will not do so with grace, nor will his influence endure. We are all driven by forces older than we remember, the archetypes, the complexes, the shadows we inherit and nurture. Until you confront your shadow, the hidden aspects of your nature, your words will carry its scent. People may not know what you're hiding, but they will feel it. Something will seem off, misaligned, inauthentic, and in persuasion, authenticity is everything. To truly move another human being, Your words must resonate from the deepest harmony within you. They must be spoken not to mask your insecurities, but to share your clarity. Imagine approaching someone to ask for support, collaboration, or agreement. If your soul is clouded by the fear of rejection, you will unconsciously beg. If it is corrupted by the hunger for domination, you will command. But if your heart is anchored in the stillness of self-understanding, you will simply invite. And this is what people respond to, not just what you say, but the energy from which it is spoken. When you are clear within yourself about your intention, your value, your worth, people feel safe to say yes. When you are confused, they retreat. This clarity cannot be faked. It must be forged, and it is forged in the fire of radical honesty with yourself. Ask yourself, why do I truly want what I'm asking for? What does it mean to me if I get it? What does it mean if I don't? What part of my identity is attached to the outcome? These questions peel back the illusion of the ego and expose the vulnerable truths beneath. And in those truths lies your power, not the power to control others, but the power to approach them without masks, without desperation, without hidden agendas. The paradox of persuasion is this: the more attached you are to the outcome, the less persuasive you become. When your sense of identity depends on getting what you want from another, you become rigid, anxious, or manipulative. But when you know yourself deeply and no longer need approval to feel whole, your words flow freely and your influence expands. You become magnetic not because you seek validation, but because you no longer need it. People sense when someone is centered. They feel it in your eyes, your posture, the rhythm of your voice. A self-aware person does not shout to be heard, nor do they whisper to be liked. They speak from the core, and the world listens. In that centeredness lies trust, and trust is the real currency of persuasion. People will not be persuaded by you unless they trust that you are not using them to complete some unfulfilled part of yourself. They must feel that you are whole and therefore safe. This is why knowing yourself is not merely psychological, but spiritual. It requires a willingness to be still, to sit in the quiet mirror of solitude, and to meet the many selves that live within. The child who was not seen, the adolescent who learned to impress, the adult who fears insignificance, all of them have voices. All of them whisper beneath your persuasive efforts. Unless you have learned to hear them, soothe them, and integrate them, they will speak through you, often without your consent. To know yourself is to know where your power ends and another's begins. It is to understand that influence is not control, but alignment. You do not need to force others when you are aligned within. You become like a tuning fork. Your frequency invites others into resonance. You offer, you suggest. You propose, but you never plead, never manipulate, never deceive. Not because it is immoral, but because it is beneath your dignity as a whole being. There is great dignity in self-awareness. It is the quiet confidence of a man or woman who has nothing to prove. When you have met your own demons and made peace with them, you no longer need others to validate your existence. You speak not to fill a void, but to offer truth. And that truth, when offered from a centered soul, becomes irresistible. This path is not for the faint-hearted. It requires relentless introspection, uncomfortable honesty, and emotional courage. It means asking yourself every time you seek to persuade, am I speaking to help or to heal? Am I asking because I believe in this vision, or because I am afraid to be without it? These are hard questions, but they are the gateway to power, not the power to overpower, but the power to connect. For all influence is connection, and connection only happens where there is truth. When you have seen your own illusions, you can speak into the illusions of others with gentleness. When you have owned your wounds, you can touch theirs with compassion. And when you no longer need to persuade to feel worthy, you become the kind of person others naturally want to follow. So begin with yourself. Stand before your own reflection and listen. Listen until the noise quiets, until the voice is calm, until only the true self remains. From that place, you will not need to persuade, you will simply speak, and the right hearts will hear you. Every human being is far more than what they appear to be on the surface. Beneath the roles, titles, and masks they wear lies a deep and ancient truth. They are shaped not merely by their personal history, but by forces far older than themselves. These forces are archetypes, universal patterns of being, eternal images etched into the fabric of the collective unconscious. To master persuasion, you must come to understand these archetypes, for they are the invisible strings that move the human soul. When you speak only to the conscious mind, you touch reason, but when you speak to the archetype, you touch destiny. Most people walk through the world unaware of the mythic patterns they are living out. They may call themselves leaders, lovers, seekers, rebels, or creators, but they are unconsciously living out the script of a deeper story. To influence someone in a way that feels meaningful and lasting, you must see through their surface and into their myth. What story are they really living? What archetype is most alive in them right now? What inner character is steering the ship? The warrior, for instance, longs for challenge, growth, and triumph. Speak to him of ease, and he will turn away. But offer him a worthy battle, a chance to prove his strength, and he will follow you into the fire. The lover craves beauty, intimacy, connection. To persuade her, you must appeal not to logic, but to the heart's longing, the promise of union, of aesthetic fulfillment, of emotional truth. The ruler seeks order, control, legacy. Offer him chaos, and he resists. Offer him structure, influence, and the ability to create stability, and he opens his gates. There are many such archetypes: the sage, who lives for truth and understanding; the magician, who desires transformation and vision; the rebel, who seeks freedom and revolution; the caregiver, who wishes to nurture and protect. Each has its own needs, fears, language, and motivations. When you understand this, you stop trying to persuade everyone the same way. Instead, you listen more deeply. You watch, you observe their words, their posture, their values, and you begin to see which force is animating them from within. This is not manipulation. It is reverence. It is a form of spiritual empathy, the ability to see another not only as they are, but as they are becoming. It is to speak not merely to their mind, but to their soul. When you appeal to the archetype, you give people the permission to become more of who they already feel they are meant to be. Your persuasion no longer feels like pressure, it feels like alignment, like recognition. They don't feel pushed, they feel understood. Consider the leader who is trying to motivate a team. If he speaks only from his own perspective, he may sound hollow, disconnected. But if he knows his team and senses that the creator archetype is strong in them, he will speak of innovation, of freedom to build. If he sees the caregiver rising, he will speak of service, of the impact they will have on others' lives. And if he senses the warrior, he will challenge them, dare them to rise, to conquer the impossible. In each case, the message may be the same, but the way it is delivered is transformed. It is not manipulation. It is resonance. Archetypes live within us all. No one is only one thing. We are made of many parts, many mythic roles, but at any given time, one may be dominant. And often, when people resist persuasion, it is because you are speaking to the wrong part of them. You are trying to reason with the lover when the warrior has taken the throne. You are appealing to the sage while the rebel is screaming for freedom. But once you see the true force behind the mask, you can shift your language, your energy, your appeal, and suddenly, what was once resistance becomes curiosity, and curiosity becomes commitment. This level of awareness requires more than intellectual knowledge. It demands intuitive presence. You must develop the eye that sees beyond the literal. You must learn to feel the archetypal energy in a person's story, in their gestures, in their desires. And above all, you must have met these same archetypes within yourself. If you have never felt the fire of the warrior in your own chest, how will you speak to it in another? If you have never known the longing of the orphan, the wisdom of the sage, the vision of the magician, your words will be hollow when you try to touch them in others. To master the art of persuasion, you must become a mirror not of who they are today, but of who they sense they could become. This is why those who truly move us do so with more than words. They carry presence. They are tuned into the mythic currents flowing beneath the surface. They don't just speak, they call something forth. They awaken the archetype already waiting to be born in us. And when we feel this awakening, we follow. Not because we were convinced, but because we were remembered. To become this kind of persuader, you must be both student and mystic, a student of human patterns, and a mystic who trusts the unseen. It is not enough to memorize the names of the archetypes or list their qualities. You must experience them, embody them, recognize them. You must sense when someone is not just making a decision, but crossing a threshold in their inner journey. Your words must become the bridge. This path requires humility, for the truth is, you are not the hero in their story they are. You are not there to overshadow, but to guide. You are not there to impress, but to unlock. When you understand the archetype at play, you can give people exactly what their inner story is calling them toward. That is the essence of noble persuasion, to align your invitation with their becoming. And that is the key. Persuasion, when done with depth and grace, is not an act of conquest, but an act of service. It is to stand at the edge of someone's path and speak the words that help them take the next step, not because you need them to, but because you see they are ready. When you persuade in this way, people do not feel pressured. They feel seen. They feel like the hero stepping into their own myth. And you become the guide, the whisperer of destiny, the voice that helped them remember who they are. There is a kind of language that does not pass through the filters of logic. It bypasses resistance, penetrates defenses, and lands directly in the heart. This language does not seek to manipulate the mind, but to stir the soul. When we speak this way from the deep core of ourselves, rooted in truth, humility, and insight, we become impossible to ignore, because the soul always recognizes its own reflection. Most people, when attempting to persuade, use words like arrows, sharp, targeted, strategic. They aim to win an argument or force agreement, but words meant only to convince rarely create transformation. They might change opinions for a moment, but they rarely move someone at the level of identity. And if persuasion is not changing the self, it is not true persuasion, it is mere compliance. The soul does not respond to facts alone. It responds to resonance, to story, to meaning. To influence someone in a lasting way, you must speak in the language of depth, and not surface communication, not shallow charm, but words born from the furnace of experience and awareness. This kind of language comes from your own journey inward, from your wounds, your awakenings, your moments of stillness and revelation. When your words carry the weight of having been lived, they land with a sacred kind of power. People feel it, something shifts. You must understand that words are more than sounds, they are carriers of energy. A single sentence spoken from the right place within can open locked doors in someone's heart. It can call forth courage, clarity, healing. It can awaken forgotten dreams, but that kind of speech cannot be memorized. It must be embodied. You cannot speak to someone's soul unless you have listened to your own. You cannot offer truth if you have not made truth your home. Consider the way children respond to storytelling. They do not listen for logic, they listen for meaning, they hear with their whole being. So too do adults, though they often pretend otherwise. Beneath every rational mind lies a mythic heart, yearning for language that reveals rather than argues. The true persuader, then, becomes a kind of storyteller not of fables, but of truths wrapped in symbolic clarity. They speak in a way that mirrors what others have felt but could not say. This does not mean being poetic for the sake of artifice. It means speaking authentically, with precision, with humility. It means saying things not to sound impressive, but to be real. If you want to touch another person's soul, you must be willing to reveal your own. You must be willing to be vulnerable in your expression, grounded in your intention, and fearless in your clarity. Words that touch the soul are often simple, but they carry immense depth. You are not alone. You are enough. I see you. This matters. These are not grand philosophical claims, but they are anchors in a chaotic world. When spoken with truth, they heal. When spoken without presence, they ring hollow. It is not the cleverness of a phrase that gives it power, but the consciousness behind it. The mind may analyze your words, but the soul will feel their source. If your speech is laced with hidden agendas, even the most beautifully crafted sentence will feel false. But if your speech arises from love, clarity, and service, even your silence can be persuasive. This is why great leaders, healers, and guides often say very little, but what they say lives on in the hearts of others forever. To cultivate this way of speaking, you must first master the art of silence. Silence is not the absence of speech, but the presence of listening. When you learn to sit with yourself, to feel your truth before speaking, your words will be fewer but infinitely more powerful. You will stop speaking to prove and start speaking to serve. You will choose your language not based on what is clever, but on what is needed. It is also necessary to remember that different souls hear in different frequencies. The same words will not touch every heart. To speak to the soul, you must first attune yourself to the soul you are addressing. This requires presence. It requires that you become still enough to sense the mood, the longing, the unspoken question behind their eyes. Are they afraid? Are they angry? Are they yearning for validation? Are they seeking hope? When you sense what is alive in them, your words can meet them exactly where they are. And when someone feels truly met, truly understood, persuasion becomes transformation. It is tempting, in a world driven by speed and noise, to try to impress with complexity. But those who change the world do so with simplicity, not the simplicity of ignorance, but the simplicity that arises from clarity. When your heart is clear, your words become clean. They do not need embellishment. They do not need explanation. They cut through illusion, not because they are sharp, but because they are true. Words that touch the soul are not rushed. They are born from still waters. If you wish to influence others in a way that lasts, slow down. Speak only what is essential. Let silence carry the rest. There is immense power in restraint. Often, the most powerful thing you can say is the thing you do not say, the pause between your sentences, the stillness in your eyes, the quiet certainty in your presence. All of this speaks louder than words ever can. And yet, when the time does come to speak, do so with your whole being. Do not hesitate. Do not hold back. Let your voice carry not just your opinion, but your conviction, your compassion, your wholeness. Let it be a bridge, not a weapon. Let it remind others of what they already know but have forgotten. That is the true function of language that touches the soul, not to install new truths, but to awaken ancient ones. When you speak like this, something miraculous happens. People listen differently, they lean in, their posture shifts, their eyes soften. They are not merely hearing your words, they are encountering themselves through you. They are remembering something sacred, something timeless. And in that moment, persuasion ceases to be about agreement, it becomes about awakening. This way of speaking is not learned in a day. It is a lifelong devotion to truth, to presence, to integrity. It requires that you become more than persuasive. You must become real, fully yourself, fully aware, fully human. Only then will your words carry the kind of power that cannot be denied. The power not to conquer, but to connect. The power not to dominate, but to remind. the power not to seduce, but to serve. When you master this language, the language of the soul, you no longer chase influence. It comes to you, because people are no longer responding to what you say. They are responding to who you are. Persuasion begins not with speech, but with silence. It begins not with the projection of thought, but with the reception of another's being. If you desire to move someone truly, deeply, you must first be moved by them. And to be moved by another, you must listen, not just to words, but to the spaces between them, not just to logic, but to emotion, energy, resistance, longing. You must listen with your whole being. There is a sacred humility in the act of listening. To listen deeply is to temporarily set aside your own agenda, your own hunger to be heard, and instead become a vessel open, quiet, receptive. In doing so, you invite the other person's truth to emerge. You give them a space where they do not need to perform or defend or conform. And it is in this space that real persuasion becomes possible, because it is in this space that trust is born. People do not change their minds because you out-argue them. They change their hearts because they feel seen. They surrender resistance not when they are cornered, but when they are understood. Listening, therefore, is not a passive act. It is active, courageous, reverent. It is an act of radical presence. When you truly listen to another person, you do more than hear their thoughts. You begin to perceive the architecture of their inner world. You start to notice what they fear, what they value, what they avoid, and what they yearn for. You learn their rhythm, their language, their emotional temperature. You begin to map their terrain, and with that map, you are no longer trying to lead them blindly into your way of thinking. You are guiding them along a path. They already recognize a path that leads not away from themselves, but deeper into who they are meant to be. This is the alchemy of influence. You begin where they are, not where you are. And to begin where they are, you must know where they are. That knowledge cannot be assumed. It must be discovered through listening. Most people do not listen. They wait to speak. They rehearse their responses while others talk. Their ears are open, but their mind is closed. Persuasion from this state is not only ineffective, it is arrogant. It assumes that your truth is more important than theirs. But true persuasion is not domination. It is invitation. It is an offering, not an imposition. Imagine the person you are trying to influence as a vast ancient forest. Every tree is a belief, every shadow a wound, every trail a pattern formed long ago. You cannot simply stomp in and shout directions. You must walk with care. You must observe what grows there, what is sacred, what has been scarred by fire. And only then, only after your eyes have adjusted to their landscape, can you gently begin to suggest a new path. That is the listening mind. That is the compassionate soul. When you master the art of listening, you gain a secret power. You learn to hear what is not being said, the sigh before the sentence, the tension behind the smile, the question hidden inside the statement. You learn that every conversation has two levels, the spoken and the unspoken, and that the real truth lives in the latter. Persuasion that reaches the soul must take both into account. For instance, a person may say they are hesitant to change jobs, but beneath that, what you hear if you are listening is fear of failure or a hidden belief that they are unworthy of better. To persuade them with facts about salary or opportunity will fall flat. But if you address the part of them that feels undeserving, if you listen to that silent cry and speak directly to it, you may free them. Because you are not arguing with their mind, you are answering their soul. This requires sensitivity. It requires that you empty yourself of assumptions and open yourself to mystery. Every human being is a mystery. Every story is a sacred unfolding. When you listen as if you are in the presence of something holy, people respond in kind. They open, they soften, they reveal, and once they have revealed themselves, persuasion becomes not something you do to them, but something that happens with them. You become, in a sense, a mirror. not a mirror that reflects their image, but one that reflects their essence. And when people see their own essence mirrored back with clarity and compassion, they trust you because they feel that you see them. And when someone feels seen, they allow themselves to be guided. Do not underestimate the power of this. Most people go through life unheard. Even surrounded by noise, they feel unseen. So when they encounter someone who truly listens, it is unforgettable. They remember you not because of what you said, but because of how you made them feel. That feeling of being valued, understood, and held becomes the fertile soil in which your words can take root. This is not easy work. Listening deeply is not for the impatient. It requires presence. It requires self-awareness. You must become aware of your own inner noise, your judgments, your reactions, your need to be right. You must silence those voices in yourself so that you can hear the voice of the other. This is why great persuaders are not necessarily the most extroverted or charismatic. They are the most present. They do not shine their light outward at all times. They draw others' light into visibility. If you wish to develop this skill, begin by listening to silence itself. Sit in stillness. Learn the texture of quiet. Listen not just to others, but to yourself. Listen to your own inner dialogue, your fears, your longings. When you become intimately acquainted with your own inner life, you become far more capable of entering someone else's with reverence. You become someone who can hold space for the truth of another, even when it is messy, or contradictory, or uncomfortable. And make no mistake, holding that space is the gateway to persuasion. People will not follow your ideas until they know that their pain has a place to be honored. They will not open to your wisdom until they feel their own confusion is allowed to exist. Listening is how you hold that space. It is the womb of transformation. It is the crucible in which truth is made welcome. You must also listen to more than words. You must listen to symbols, to patterns, to stories. Listen to the metaphors people use. Listen to the images they repeat. All of it points to their inner architecture. All of it offers you the keys to unlock their soul's door, not for your gain, but for their awakening. And once that door is open, you may offer your truth as a gift, not because you want to change them, but because you honor them enough to believe they are ready to grow. To listen in this way is to love. It is the most human thing we can do, and paradoxically, it is also the most divine, because when we listen deeply, we become more than individuals in conversation. We become vessels for something larger. A field of presence, a sacred exchange, and in that space, influence flows not from ego, but from essence. It is not about cleverness or argument. It is about alignment. So if you seek to become a master of persuasion, begin here. In stillness, in presence, in deep listening, because the voice that most needs to be heard is not always your own. It is the voice of the other waiting to be received, waiting to be reflected, waiting to be remembered. And when you can offer that reflection with love, your words, when they finally come, will carry the power not only to influence, but to liberate. There is a silent truth within the human psyche. People are not moved by logic alone. The human being is not a machine to be reprogrammed by statistics or data points. Beneath all rational arguments, beneath the surface of intellect, there lies a sea of emotion, vast, unpredictable, yet undeniably powerful. This is the true landscape of persuasion. For if you seek to change a mind without touching a heart, you are merely rearranging furniture in a locked room. Emotion is the language of the soul. It is the invisible force that drives human decisions, beliefs, and actions. 1,000 facts may fall on deaf ears, but a single moment of emotional resonance can open the floodgates of transformation. We do not remember what someone told us as much as we remember how they made us feel. This is not weakness, it is design. It is the way we are structured. Our nervous system, our memory, our desires all are shaped and influenced by emotion. and to ignore this truth is to forfeit your power to persuade at the deepest level. The rational mind is like the captain of a ship who thinks he steers alone. But underneath him is the ocean of emotion, and it is the waves, not the wheel, that truly determine the course. Every person you meet, whether calm or chaotic, open or closed, is carrying within them tides of unspoken emotion. Fear, joy, sorrow, guilt, hope, pride, shame, love. These forces shape how they hear, how they respond, and how they decide. If you wish to reach them, you must speak to these emotions not to manipulate, but to resonate. Emotional resonance does not require dramatic display. It requires depth of presence. It means you allow yourself to feel what the other feels, and in doing so, you become a mirror. In that mirror, they recognize something they had long forgotten, that they are not alone in their struggle, not unseen in their journey. This moment of recognition softens the walls that logic alone cannot breach. It is in this openness that true persuasion begins. People do not resist ideas because they are unreasonable. Often, they resist because they are afraid. They fear change, fear being wrong, fear losing control, fear judgment, fear pain. These fears are rarely spoken aloud, but they are always present. To move someone emotionally, you must meet them where their fear lies. You must honor it, not dismiss it. You must gently hold space for it. When people feel safe, when they feel understood, their defenses relax, and then they become available to hear something new. You cannot appeal to emotion unless you yourself are emotionally attuned. That is, you must have walked through your own shadows, touched your own grief, danced with your own joy. A person who is disconnected from their emotional world cannot access the depth needed to move another. It is not charisma that persuades, it is authenticity, it is emotional truth. When you speak from your core, when your voice carries the vibration of sincerity, people feel it, and what is felt has more power than what is merely heard. To truly persuade, you must awaken feeling, but not just any feeling, the right feeling. There is no single emotional key that unlocks every door. Some people are waiting to feel hope, others relief. Some need to feel empowered, others validated. The art is in discerning what emotion the person longs for and then creating the conditions in which that emotion can arise. You are not forcing it. You are revealing what was already within them, waiting to be awakened. This is why stories are such powerful tools. A well-told story bypasses the intellect and goes straight to the heart. It allows the listener to drop their guard because they do not feel attacked or corrected. Instead, they are invited into a human experience, and in that experience they feel, and in feeling they shift. The story becomes a bridge from their current belief to a new possibility. Every story, when told from truth, becomes a subtle act of persuasion. But even stories must be chosen with care. Do not use them to distract or impress. Use them to connect. Share stories that are real, vulnerable, honest. Share moments of your own failure, your own confusion, your own transformation. This kind of sharing is not weakness, it is power in its most magnetic form. Because when you speak from your own humanity, you call forth the humanity in others. And in that space, change becomes not only possible, it becomes inevitable. We must also understand that emotion does not replace logic, it integrates it. A well-formed argument, supported by clear reasoning, becomes unstoppable when fused with emotional truth. The two are not enemies, they are partners. Logic convinces the mind, emotion moves the will. Logic says, this makes sense. Emotion says, this matters. Both are essential, but if you must choose which to begin with, always begin with feeling. This is particularly true in moments of resistance. When someone is angry or dismissive, do not counter with facts. First, validate the emotion. Acknowledge it without trying to fix it. Let them know that it is okay to feel what they feel. This simple act of emotional acknowledgement is often enough to shift the entire dynamic. Suddenly, they feel respected, not attacked. And once that emotional connection is made, the door opens for the logic to be heard. Emotion also brings color to your language. It infuses your words with meaning. A dull, mechanical voice reciting even the most brilliant ideas will fall flat. But a voice charged with feeling calm or passionate, depending on the moment, becomes magnetic. People are drawn not just to what you say, but to the energy with which you say it. That energy, when grounded in authentic emotion, is contagious. It awakens something within them that they cannot explain, only feel. This is not about dramatizing your message, it is about feeling it first. You cannot stir emotion in another unless you are stirred yourself. If you speak about injustice, let the fire of justice burn in you. If you speak of healing, let your own scars guide your tone. If you speak of vision, let hope radiate from your eyes. You are not just a messenger, you are the message. Your emotional state is part of the transmission. Too many people attempt persuasion from a place of control. They think that if they just say the right thing, the other person will change. But human beings are not machines. They are not puzzles to be solved. They are mysteries to be felt. To persuade someone, you must first surrender your need to control them. You must meet them with empathy, with humility, and with emotional courage. This way of being is not merely a technique, it is a way of living. It means you begin to relate to everyone, not just those you wish to influence, through the lens of emotional attunement. You see beneath the surface. You listen with your whole body. You honor the inner world of those around you. And from this way of being, your influence begins to expand, not because you are trying, but because you are aligned. There is a deep intelligence in emotion. It tells us what matters. It guides us toward truth. It reveals what the mind often conceals. When you learn to work with emotion in yourself and in others, you become a bridge. Not a bridge of argument, but a bridge of feeling. And it is across this bridge that transformation walks. Quietly, powerfully, permanently. The power to persuade others begins not with the mastery of tactics or the clever use of words, but with the mastery of self. Before you can influence another soul, you must first be rooted in your own. The voice that carries the greatest weight is not the loudest, but the one most aligned with inner truth. If your persuasion is not anchored in a deep sense of self and a clear sense of purpose, then your words, no matter how eloquent, will ring hollow. They may be heard, but they will not echo. To develop a strong sense of self is to undergo a process of deep inner excavation. You must peel back the layers of identity that have been shaped by others' society, family, fear, ego, and ask the question, who am I when nothing external defines me? This question cannot be answered quickly, nor should it be. It is a lifelong pilgrimage. It requires solitude, reflection, discomfort, and above all, honesty. The person who is willing to meet their own shadow, to face the parts of themselves they would rather deny, becomes unshakable. Not perfect, not without flaw, but whole. There is a profound persuasive power in wholeness. It is not found in charisma or charm, but in integrity. When people encounter someone who is whole, someone who speaks from the center of their being, they instinctively trust them. Not because they agree with every word, but because they feel something rare, coherence. The person's words, actions, energy, and presence are all saying the same thing. There is no inner contradiction. This coherence creates a magnetic field. It draws others in, not with force, but with truth. You cannot fake this. You cannot pretend to be grounded when your soul is fractured. You cannot lead others to clarity if you are confused about who you are and what you stand for. The world is full of voices trying to manipulate and convince, but most lack depth. They echo without foundation. If you wish to rise above the noise, become someone whose life is a reflection of inner conviction. When your outer message aligns with your inner essence, your words carry the weight of authenticity, and that is a persuasion no one forgets. Purpose is the compass of persuasion. It gives direction, meaning, and energy to your message. Without purpose, your words become scattered, your influence becomes shallow. But when you are deeply connected to why you speak, to what you serve that is greater than yourself, then even simple language becomes potent. It does not matter whether you are speaking to one person or 1,000. When your words are rooted in purpose, they reach into places no argument can touch. To discover your purpose, you must go beyond your desires and step into your responsibilities, not in the sense of obligation, but of destiny. Ask yourself, what have I been called to offer this world? What wound in me has become wisdom for others? What pain have I endured that now gives me the strength to uplift another? Your purpose is not something you choose, it is something you remember. It has been with you since the beginning, like a silent whisper waiting for your attention. And when you finally hear it, your life begins to organize itself around a higher order. People are drawn to those who are living for something beyond themselves. They sense the presence of meaning, and they want to be near it. They may not understand it intellectually, but their soul responds. This is the essence of spiritual leadership, to embody purpose so fully that others feel invited to discover their own. Your purpose, when lived authentically, becomes a mirror in which others see a reflection of their own unrealized potential. But know this: a strong sense of self does not mean rigidity. It is not an armor. True strength is flexible. It allows for growth, correction, evolution. To be rooted in yourself does not mean you stop listening to others. On the contrary, it means you can listen more openly because you are not threatened by difference. You are not trying to defend a fragile identity. You are grounded, and so you can meet others where they are, not to overpower them, but to connect. This connection is the soul of persuasion. People do not change because you prove them wrong. They change because they feel you are right, not just intellectually, but morally, spiritually, energetically. That feeling comes from your alignment. It comes from the quiet strength that radiates when you know who you are and why you speak. Your energy enters the room before your words do. If your energy is scattered, desperate, egoic, people will feel it no matter how beautiful your language. But if your energy is calm, rooted, clear, they will listen even before you begin to speak. This is why all persuasive power begins within. It begins in the silent conversations you have with yourself, in the questions you dare to ask, in the pain you dare to feel, in the truth you are willing to live. Do not mistake visibility for impact. Many speak, but few transform. If you want to transform, start with the inner structure of your being. Strengthen your sense of self like a foundation, brick by brick, with honesty, humility, and courage. Let go of the need to please. Let go of the need to be right. Instead, commit to being real. When you are real, people feel safe. And when they feel safe, they open. That opening is where persuasion begins, not in argument, but in presence. You must also understand that your purpose is not about personal success. It is not about applause or approval. It is about service. Real persuasion is a form of service. It is not manipulation. It is a sacred offering, the gift of insight, clarity, direction, healing. When you persuade with purpose, you are not trying to win. You are trying to awaken. You are trying to remind others of what they already know deep down but have forgotten. And to do that, you must first remember who you are. Many avoid this path because it is hard. It requires solitude. It requires stripping away all that is false. It may leave you feeling alone for a time, but on the other side of that loneliness is freedom, the freedom to speak not from fear, but from essence. Not from ego, but from soul. And that kind of voice, the voice of the soul, is irresistible. It does not demand attention. It commands it effortlessly. When you live from your core, persuasion becomes less about effort and more about alignment. You are no longer trying to convince. You are simply expressing truth, and those who are ready will hear it. Those who are not may resist, but even in their resistance, something within them begins to shift. Because the truth, when spoken with purpose, does not disappear. It lingers. It plants seeds. It moves through unseen channels, slowly dissolving walls built long ago. So if you wish to become a master of persuasion, do not first seek strategies. Seek yourself. Know who you are beneath the noise. Know why you speak, what you serve, and what you are willing to stand for when no one agrees. That is where real power lies, not in clever words, but in unwavering presence. And once you find that presence, your words will no longer be just tools, they will become instruments of transformation. There is a sacred rhythm to all human interaction, a cadence beneath the surface of conversation that only the attuned can perceive. Those who seek to master persuasion must come to revere this rhythm, not disrupt it. Words have power, yes, but the timing of words and the silences between them carry a weight that logic alone cannot measure. The person who understands timing and silence does not need to raise their voice to be heard. They do not need to rush to respond. They understand the invisible language of space. In the stillness between words, meaning breathes. Truth often arrives not in the statement, but in the pause that follows. To speak with impact, one must know when not to speak. Silence is not emptiness. It is a vessel, it is a force, and it is a mirror. People are rarely persuaded by noise. They are moved by presence, and silence is the signature of presence. It tells others, I am here, I am listening, I am not desperate to convince, I am grounded in what I know. Most people fear silence. They seek to fill it with chatter to protect themselves from its discomfort. But the wise understand that silence is where the real work happens. It is in silence that a listener processes, that an emotion unfolds, that a realization dawns. When you speak and then remain quiet, you give space for your words to land. You give time for the soul to catch up with the mind. If you fill that space too soon, you rob the other of their transformation. Mastering timing is not about delaying speech for dramatic effect. It is about attuning yourself to the moment. Every interaction has a pulse, an unspoken tempo, and you must learn to sense it. When someone is open, the timing invites movement. When someone is closed, the timing asks for stillness. If you push when you should pause, you create resistance. But if you pause when pressure rises, you create openness. This is not manipulation. It is listening with your entire being. True persuasion is more musical than mechanical. It is not a linear act, it is a dance, and in dance, timing is everything. You cannot force your rhythm upon another. You must move with them, not against them. The persuasive master watches for cues not only in words, but in body, in breath, in energy. A change in posture, a flicker in the eyes, a hesitation in the voice. These are the notes in the music of human connection. Learn to read them, and you will know when to speak and when to wait. In the modern world, we are conditioned to respond instantly, to fill every gap with content, to avoid silence as if it were a threat. But it is in silence that depth is found. A message delivered too quickly drowns in noise, but a message allowed to settle in stillness finds its way into the subconscious. It lingers, it resonates, it transforms. This is the work of timing. It is not only what you say, but when you say it, and what you allow to remain unsaid. There are moments when silence speaks louder than any argument. When someone expects confrontation, and you offer stillness, they meet themselves. Their own words echo back to them. Their own logic or lack thereof becomes visible. In these moments, you are not pressing your view. You are reflecting theirs. Silence becomes your mirror, your shield, and your most powerful tool. For in silence, the ego cannot hide. It fidgets, it rushes, it collapses under its own weight. Do not underestimate the power of strategic waiting. When you sense that someone is close to understanding, close to softening, close to surrendering a false belief. Do not speak too soon. Hold the space, let their insight arrive naturally. If you speak too quickly, you rob them of their own victory, and people trust most what they feel they have discovered themselves. Let your silence be an invitation, not an interruption. You must also learn to be comfortable with your own silence. If you are anxious in the pause, others will feel it. They will interpret it as uncertainty. But if you are calm, grounded, present in your stillness, it creates trust. People feel that you are not trying to dominate, but to understand, not trying to control, but to connect. This shift in energy changes the entire dynamic. It turns confrontation into conversation, debate into dialogue, defense into discovery. Timing also includes knowing when to withdraw completely. There are times when silence is not just a pause, but a boundary. When persuasion is not possible, not welcome, or not wise, the strongest move is to say nothing. Not from weakness, but from discernment. You are not responsible for forcing understanding where it is not invited. You are responsible only for showing up fully, offering truth clearly, and then releasing attachment. Silence in this way becomes your surrender. The greatest persuaders throughout history were not those who spoke the most, but those who spoke when it mattered. Their words had weight because they were rare. Their silences spoke volumes because they were intentional. In a world of constant noise, the one who speaks with precision and rests in stillness commands attention, not by effort, but by presence. You will find in your journey that the most powerful moments are not the ones filled with passionate speeches, but the ones where nothing needed to be said. A look, a pause, a breath, a step back. These moments often change hearts more deeply than hours of argument. Because they honor the process of the soul, they say, I trust that you are capable of arriving at truth. I do not need to drag you there. I only need to walk with you until you're ready. This level of trust cannot be faked. It must be cultivated in yourself. You must learn to trust your own timing. Trust that your truth, when delivered in the right moment, will find its mark. Trust that your silence, when chosen wisely, will not make you less persuasive, but more powerful. Trust that patience is not passivity, but profound strength. In your interactions, practice speaking less and observing more. Feel the rhythm, feel when the moment opens, and feel when it closes. Do not fear the silence between. Let it be your ally. Let it be the ground on which your persuasion takes root. Let it be the place where the other feels not coerced, but seen. This seeing is everything. People do not change because you said something clever. They change because, in your presence, they felt safe enough to meet a deeper part of themselves. So the next time you feel the urge to speak, pause. Feel the space. Ask yourself, is this the right moment? Is this the right tone? Is this the right silence? In mastering this question, you begin to master not only persuasion, but yourself. And in mastering yourself, you offer the world a rare and sacred gift. Words that matter, delivered with care, wrapped in the golden fabric of timing and silence. Because the truly wise know, it is not how much you say that moves mountains. It is when you say it, and how deeply your silence allowed the mountain to hear. In the end, it is not the loudest voice that carries the greatest power, but the one that knows when to speak and when to be still. Silence, when rooted in wisdom, becomes a force of transformation. Timing, when guided by presence, becomes the gateway to trust. You were not born to argue your way into the hearts of others. You were born to embody such depth, patience, and clarity that your mere presence inspires reflection. Master silence, and you will speak with the voice of truth. Master timing, and you will move souls without force. The world needs fewer voices demanding to be heard, and more hearts willing to listen before they speak. Be that voice, be that soul. Speak not to impress, but to awaken. And when the moment calls for stillness, honor it. For in that sacred pause lives the true power to persuade.